Part 56. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 551. Seeing the box office results of Zootopia, professionals and non-professionals have completely different reactions. The staff of Yangchuan Zoo have been paying close attention to this movie. Recently, the movie is also the most talked about. In many scenes, they also played the roles of passers-by A, B, C, and D. After the box office came out, they immediately checked it online. However, the box office of more than 1 million is pitifully small compared to the two movies with hundreds of millions of yuan. Even compared to the 8 million of passers-by A, it is simply a joke and a foil. How could this happen? I watched this movie last night and I think it's awesome. I have never seen a movie of this style. A female clerk in the office said strangely, "It's really a sister who can't be written." Anyway, I tell you, you should be honest in the next few days. When you see the director, walk around him and don't offend him. I guess the director will not be in a good mood, Sister Tong said. I can't figure it out. After I finished watching it yesterday, all my mind was full of movie clips at night. It means it is still very attractive. Why is the box office so bad? The female clerk muttered. Maybe it's because the screening is relatively low, someone said. The screening of that passerby is also very low. I heard that it is only twice as high as the zoo. According to this ratio, the director's film should have at least 4 or 5 million. No matter, I plan to call a few girlfriends to watch it again tonight, the female clerk said. Didn't you say it was scary? Sister Tong asked. Sister, I haven't figured out a lot of details. The more I think about it, the more interesting it is. There are a lot of details in it, and I feel that they all contain the truth of life. Anyway, the movie is fake, and there are no bloody scenes, the young clerk said. Hey, it's a pity that it's too late, otherwise I would take my children to watch it, as a show of support for the director, Sister Tong said. Professionals have different views. Manager Ling was slightly surprised after reading yesterday's box office statistics. The relationship between the screening rate and the box office is very complicated. For example, if the same 10% of the screening time is different, the box office will definitely be very different. Judging from the numbers alone, the screening rate of Zootopia is 40% of that of I Am a Passerby, but I Am is generally screened in the afternoon, and part of it is screened in the prime time of the evening, while Zootopia is screened all morning and early morning. According to previous statistics, movies with similar screening rates and screening times as Zootopia have never had a first-day box office of over 1 million. Over 500,000 is considered very good, and the screening period can be extended, such as from 3 days to 1 week. Most of these movies have a total box office of only 2 or 3 million. After the release, Manager Ling watched Zootopia himself, and the feeling of this movie was interesting. The actors are all animals, which is a gimmick. Thinking from the perspective of others, swapping roles and integrating horror into seemingly peaceful daily life is chilling. But he is not sure whether this movie can win the market. After all, there has never been a similar model. Judging from the results achieved on the first day, it may be the role of the fan effect. Yangchuan Zoo has a certain number of fans across the country. There is also a possibility that the quality of the movie itself is good, and from the market acceptance, it is likely to be higher than I Am a Passerby. Boss Ling, do you want to increase the number of subsequent screenings? The assistant asked. Wait a minute, let me see the reaction online. Boss Ling thought about it. The screenings in the theaters were very tight. The two movies that broke 100 million yuan on the first day were the main ones. It would be difficult to squeeze them out if they were increased. For other movies, it would be difficult to increase the number of screenings by 1 point. He did not immediately decide on the screening of Zootopia, but went online to Douban. Douban is a community website that started with books, movies, and music, providing information about books, movies, music, and other works. It has more than 200 million independent users per month and an average daily PV of 160 million. Among them, Douban Movie Section is the largest and most authoritative movie sharing and review community in China, with millions of movies and filmmakers information, more than 2,500 movie theaters, and tens of millions of people who love movies. It can be said that Douban's movie ratings are the most authoritative in China. Although the existence of paid water army and various trolls cannot be ruled out, overall, it can reflect the quality of a movie more objectively. Many neutral audiences will go to Douban to find some high-scoring movies to watch before choosing a movie. Of course, the quality of a movie itself does not necessarily represent the box office. According to Mr. Ling's experience, the box office of a movie with a high Douban score will not be too low at least. As long as it can reach 7 points or above, it is no problem to collect tens of millions of box office. Therefore, Douban ratings have also become one of the important bases for theater scheduling. Douban's ratings range from 1 to 10 points. The higher the score, the better the movie. 6 points or more is worth watching, 7 points or more can be classified as a good movie, and 8 points or more are classic movies. As for 9 points or more, it may be described as a legendary movie, such as Shenzhou Redemption, 9.6 points, Inception 9.4 points, Life is Beautiful 9.4 points, Forrest Gump 9.3 points. These highly rated movies may not have the top box office in the mainland, but they are not low and have commercial value for promotion. Several movies released in the second week of the summer season have mixed reviews on Douban. The two best-selling movies are the most controversial. The rating of Tiny Times 4 is currently 4.6 points. Like the previous three movies, they are all low scores below the passing line. Movies are market-oriented things, not works of art. Poor reputation does not mean that there is no market. Sometimes it is just the opposite. Tiny Times is a representative example. This kind of purely fan-oriented movie has very different reviews. Those who love it to death, and those who hate it to death. There are fans who must give it 5 points no matter what, and there are also trolls who are enough to make everyone with normal movie aesthetic ability doubt whether they are brain dead. The more fierce the quarrel, the happier Mr. Ling is. It would be best if the fans of both sides went to the streets to fight fiercely, and the fight was bloody and half paralyzed. Then the movie would be completely popular, and the box office would soar. Except for the fans who were beaten, everyone would be very happy. As an art film with many big names, the score of Taoist Goes Down the Mountain is a bit ugly, 5.4 points, and the comments are almost one-sided, 3 words, I can't understand it, 4 words, inexplicable. Another 4, Zhang Lang has run out of ideas. In short, it looks embarrassed after failing to pretend to be cool and being exposed. Passerby's score is average, 7.6 points. Finally, I saw Zootopia. Rating 9.2. Mr. Ling rubbed his eyes, thinking he must have seen it wrong. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 552. Mr. Ling has also seen Zootopia himself. It is a good movie with characteristics and innovation. But its shortcomings and advantages are equally obvious, such as the actors are not very professional, the plot is a bit thin, probably due to the small investment, and the props are also a bit rough. The flaws do not outweigh the merits. It is a good movie. If Mr. Ling were to rate it from a professional perspective, he could give it a little more than 7 points. In any case, it is impossible to give less than 9 points, and 8 points is impossible. Mr. Ling's first reaction was that the producer hired Water Army to deliberately raise the score to affect the audience's viewing and the theater's scheduling. Theaters love and hate Water Army, especially those Water Army that is not in their hands, which often misleads the work of theaters. However, he carefully looked at the personal information and comments of the people who rated, and he suddenly understood 7 or 8 points. It's not Water Army, but too few people who rated. Most of the people who watched the film and commented on it at the first time were fans of the zoo. Since fans are commenting, they will definitely have strong personal feelings. In addition, there are few people who rate the film, so it is not surprising that the film has an exaggerated high score. Let's talk about the dozen comments below. A seemingly happy horror film is creepy. 5 stars. Give it a full 5 stars for the living special effects. No violence, no blood, no monsters and zombies, but it is creepy. Can horror films be shot like this? It's eye-opening. 5 stars. The result of empathy is to make everyone kinder. 5 stars. No buying, no killing. This is a radical animal protection propaganda film. There are spoilers, infiltration. This is a long review. The author is a well-known film critic in the industry, and he has met Mr. Ling once. Mr. Ling opened it and read it. First of all, I am not a fan. As a 40-year-old adult, my love for animals is quite deep. I see through the fake cute appearance and get to the essence, skin, flesh, and bones. To put it in a way that people can understand, I prefer to eat animals. Beef, mutton, dog meat, and pork are all my dishes. There is no delicacy from the mountains and the sea that I don't like. At the beginning, when the brother and sister argued about whether animals are food for humans or lives that need to be protected, I sneered and thought that the reason why the little girl had such a naive idea was because her brother worked hard every day to move bricks at the construction site to provide her with food, accommodation, and transportation. He starved her for 3 days and even ate her favorite puppy. The horror Zootopia, from the outside, does not look scary. On the contrary, it is very beautiful. There are small bridges, flowing water, and ancient buildings, a winery where monkeys make wine, a restaurant run by a group of gourmets, and beautiful scenery like a paradise. There are mysterious underground tombs, and all kinds of animals, whether herbivorous or carnivorous, live in the horror animal city, living a loving life. Until our protagonist, the unknown but handsome brother, came here, he found that under all these beautiful surfaces, there is a jaw-dropping truth. The animal city is ruled by animals and humans, and animals have exchanged roles here. The delicate and beautiful fox carries a newly bought human skin bag and wants a new fur coat. The fur on the animal model is all made of human fur. In the farm on the back mountain, the big wild boar uncle gets up very early every day to feed various feeds to the more than 100 humans in the pen. Seeing them grow white and fat, the wild boar uncle showed a gratified smile. When the new year comes, they will be slaughtered and sold for meat, and the family will have a much better life next year. There is a small zoo in the animal city, with all kinds of cages. There are many animals coming to the Zootopia to play every day. The sexy panda brother likes to watch 2 black people mating. Several white little girls wearing flowery skirts live in the girl mountain. Every time the kind-hearted alpaca uncle comes, he will bring a lot of fruits to tease the little girls. After the little girls climb under the fence, he will throw them to eat. 2 porpoises like to take selfies. They often go to the aquarium and pinch a few humans in the water to force them to take photos together. The residents of the Zootopia have a kind heart. They tame obedient humans as pets, lead them with ropes, and teach them to urinate in the grove regularly every day. In order to protect humans, many pets will be castrated and sterilized before being raised. Uncle Grizzly Bear is a famous hunter in the city. He has a hunting team under him. Every time he captures a human and returns to the city, he will be warmly welcomed by the residents of the city. He will cut off the fingers of young males and the noses of young females. For the bravest children, Uncle Grizzly has hung human head specimens of various skin colors in his wooden house by the river, and a photo of him holding a hunting rifle and stepping on a dying human. Tingfeng Pavilion Food City has expanded its barbecue business. Fresh marbled fat buttocks and bloody 15-year-old ribs are served to the table in a stream. Of course, there are also human kidneys, human whips, and spicy and refreshing human brains, which are the favorite foods of male animals. The richest rhino uncle makes a fortune by selling human teeth. Every week, he entrusts Uncle Grizzly's hunting team to hunt humans, knock out their teeth, and make expensive human tooth products. A mentally retarded human can be sold at a high price in a medical school. The animal city has regulations that in order to ensure humanity, only mentally retarded humans can be used for live experiments. The same is true for the fighting arena. It is clearly stipulated that fighters are strictly prohibited from stabbing humans' eyes directly with swords, and can only start at the back, buttocks, and other meaty places. In addition, there is a group of lovely policemen in Zootopia. There are hundreds of strong and powerful humans who have been trained since childhood and guard the city faithfully. As long as the animal trainer gives an order, they will tear apart all the rebellious humans without hesitation. Humans are a scarce resource in this world. They live in the surrounding mountains and forests and make a living by picking wild fruits and drinking mountain springs. Our male protagonist came to such a world as a human. As soon as he opened his eyes, he was shot in the knee. In the distance, Uncle Grizzly was leading the hunting team to surround him. More than a dozen domesticated hunters roared and rushed towards him. Fortunately, a group of wild men saved him. This is a group of wild humans who call themselves Lure. They live tenaciously in the wild in accordance with the will of the god of fire Mazda and form a human resistance army. The male protagonist learned that if he wanted to return to the original world, he must kill the queen of Zootopia, a big cat. With the help of a brave young Lure man, the male protagonist sneaked into the city and gave a kind long-eared rabbit as a pet, and began his undercover operation. Unexpectedly, during the undercover, the male protagonist and the long-eared rabbit fell in love with each other and finally accidentally revealed his plan. For love, the long-eared rabbit finally crossed the racial boundaries, abandoned the feudal family, and decided to help Appa. She cut off one of her ears as a token and helped the male protagonist sneak into the bedroom of the big cat queen. I have to say, why can the rabbit enter the queen's bedroom instead of the palace? There are many such foreshadowings in this movie that are worth pondering. Everything is ready. When the male protagonist raised the knife, the big cat queen, who was wearing gauze and taking a lazy nap, turned her head gently. That face turned out to be a human face, the male protagonist's sister. Stab or not, this is a question. Fortunately, the male protagonist did not have to make such a difficult choice. The moment he saw the big cat queen, he woke up from his dream. After the male protagonist had a horrified dream, he and his sister released several fish at home. At the end of the movie, the male protagonist took out a small section of rabbit ears that still had body temperature from his arms, and gazed at the distance affectionately in the sunset. At the end of the review, the film critic said, "After watching this movie, I was completely confused. From a professional point of view, this movie is not worth a 5-star rating. Maybe 7 points is enough. But I don't know why, I couldn't help but give it 5 stars, full marks. If I must find out the reason for giving it 10 stars, I can only say that I really can't suppress such an impulse. The whole movie is so weird that it makes my hair stand on end and I can't help but want to watch it again. I won't say more. I will watch it again tomorrow morning." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 553. The comments on Dubon cannot be taken seriously. The cinema still has to consider the overall situation when arranging films, but the comments at least explain some problems from a certain angle and provide a certain reference for the cinema to arrange the film. After exiting Dubon, Mr. Ling pondered for a few seconds, turned off the computer, left the office, and came to the small screening room next to it. "Xiao Li, find the negative of Zootopia and let me watch it," Mr. Ling said to the projectionist. The movie of more than 80 minutes was quickly finished. Perhaps it was a preconceived idea. Mr. Ling felt different from the previous viewing this time. After leaving the screening room, he returned to the office and made a phone call to call the assistant. "Mr. Ling, what do you want?" The assistant knocked on the door and walked in. Mr. Ling asked, "Have the box office reports from various places been submitted today?" The assistant was slightly stunned and subconsciously looked at the wall clock. It was only 4:30 in the afternoon. Usually, the daily box office statistics are conducted the next morning and reported in the afternoon. That is to say, the box office results of the day will not be available until noon the next day at the earliest. "You mean, yesterday's box office?" the assistant asked uncertainly. "Well, go check the box office results of the Zootopia show this morning. If the results are good, I will consider adding some screenings for it," Mr. Ling said. "Okay, I'll do it right away." The assistant turned and went out. It is definitely not possible to count the box office for the whole day now. If you only check the box office of one movie, it is not difficult. What's more, the movie Zootopia only has one show at 9 o'clock in the morning today. The box office information of the theaters under the theater chain is connected to the headquarters. You can just go back and do a separate statistical work. Not long after, the assistant knocked on the door and returned to Mr. Ling's office. "Mr. Ling, I found it," the assistant said. "How much?" Mr. Ling was busy with other things and asked without raising his head. The assistant hesitated for a moment, as if he was not sure. He lowered his head and looked at the box office data printed in his arms again, and then said, "This morning, the box office of the theater chain was 112,000. Oh." Hearing this number, Mr. Ling put down his work, raised his head, and thought about it. As expected, the box office of Zootopia is rising despite the extremely unfavorable scheduling, and the speed of the rise is very fast. The box office of 112,000 is not the national box office, but the box office of Polycinema, which occupies about 10% of the national market. In other words, the national box office of Zootopia this morning is about 1 million. According to the general experience of the industry, there are very few audiences in the morning and night shows, and the morning shows are even less than the night shows. In this way, it can be expected that if the scheduling remains unchanged, the national box office of Zootopia today should be more than 2.5 million, and even more than 3 million, which is more than double yesterday. On Dubon, the reputation of the movie is very good, and the current market test shows that the movie has also achieved good results. Thinking of this, Mr. Ling said decisively, "So, starting from tomorrow, we will increase the screening of Zootopia to 10%, in addition, we will extend the screening time for 10 days. "Mr. Ling, extending the screening time is easy, but it is very difficult to increase it to 10% all at once." The assistant looked embarrassed and said, "The screenings are all full now. If Zootopia has an extra 7% of screenings, it means that other movies will have to be compressed." "Yes," Mr. Ling said, "which movies can be compressed now? It is not worthwhile for theaters to compress the screenings of popular movies such as Taoist Priest Goes Down the Mountain and Tiny Times to make room for Zootopia. Although Zootopia has shown a certain commercial value, it is only valuable and cannot be compared with blockbusters. For the same movie, Tiny Times and Taoist Priest Goes Down the Mountain may have an attendance rate of 70%, while Zootopia may only have 50%. Considering the price difference of movie tickets, it is definitely not worthwhile to compress blockbusters to make room for niche movies." Even Mr. Ling himself did not think that Zootopia could be compared with these two hot-selling blockbusters. If it was to be compressed, it could only be squeezed out from the schedule of other small films. The schedule is like water in a sponge. If you squeeze it, there will always be some. The assistant racked his brains and finally squeezed out a small amount of schedule from several other ordinary box office films in the same period. The 3 films that were squeezed out were all small domestic bad films. The original schedule could not be lower. After being squeezed out, they were almost in a state of being taken off the screen. The most pitiful one, Swimming Pool Night, was completely taken off the screen after only 4 screenings. However, just like the cleavage of a cup, no matter how much you squeeze, it is impossible to squeeze out too much because of its own conditions. Only 3% can be squeezed out, raising the schedule rate of Zootopia from 3% to 6%, which is still a long way from the 10% set by Mr. Ling before. This is the limit of what we can do. We have contracts with all distributors. If we squeeze them too hard, it will be difficult to explain to the distributors of other films. The assistant was really helpless and said with embarrassment. Mr. Ling could understand the assistant's difficulty. The film's schedule had already been agreed with the investors in advance. Unless there was a major change, it would not be easy for the theater to make major adjustments to the schedule. Let's do this, it's just 6%. In addition, change the screening time. I am passerby. There is one show at 9:30 p.m., right? Arrange a show at 9:30 p.m. for Zootopia, and play on both sides. Let's play in the ring for 2 days and see how it works, Mr. Ling said. You mean, if I am a passerby and the box office fails, let it make way for Zootopia? The assistant took a breath. Mr. Ling's decision seems a bit too radical. Anyway, I am a passerby. They are all masterpieces directed by Dongsheng. Although the current box office is not as good as several other blockbusters, it is not bad. It should not be a problem to earn 40 to 50 million in the end. Even if this horror Animal City is impressive, it won't reach a total box office of 40 to 50 million, right? Besides, I have a very good reputation as a passerby. If I really let it make way for the zoo, it might cause criticism. Mr. Ling raised his eyes and glanced at the assistant who was still standing in the office, and said, Xiao Wang, you have to understand that we are businessmen, not writers. Art and feelings are just tools for making money for us. The greatest morality of a businessman is to make money. Just do what I say. If Zootopia can beat Passerby A, let Passerby A step aside and continue to be Passenger A. If it cannot, then Animal City will be Passerby A. It's that simple. I don't want to say it again. Yeah, I understand. The assistant nodded quickly. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 554. On the second day after Zootopia was released, the nationwide box office was released, totaling 2.627 million, showing a strong upward trend. The third day of Zootopia's release is also the last day of Zootopia's release as originally planned. The film schedule adjustments of various theaters have not yet officially started, except for the Poly family, which has been moved up 1 day. Zootopia is basically released as normal according to the original film schedule. The box office that day approached the 4 million mark. 30% of them benefited from adjustments made by Poly Cinemas. In 3 days of release, under the extremely unfavorable circumstances of film schedule, the nationwide sales are approaching 9 million. Mr. Ling is paying attention to me. Passerby A. The box office in 3 days reached 22 million, which is more than double that of Zootopia. But he noticed that in the ring with Zootopia, Passerby A's the box office is only 75% of that of Zootopia. In this confrontation, Passerby A was defeated. Moreover, Passerby A has stayed in the popular time slot for 3 days before. According to the usual practice, it is generally difficult to surpass the box office later. Of course, this kind of film that relies on word-of-mouth fermentation may maintain a balance. Zootopia is different. This film was almost always released during off-peak periods, and there were very few films scheduled. It has great potential for subsequent hits. If you calculate the filming rate and the number of shows at different times, Zootopia's revenue will far exceed that of Passerby even during unpopular screening periods. Mr. Ling once again called his assistant, and this time he issued a fatal order. No matter what he thought of, he must increase the schedule of Zootopia to 10%, and try to give a good time slot. National box office data was quickly placed on the desks of managers of major theater chains. After Polly's Mr. Ling, many theater chains took the same measures as him, and then adjusted the schedule of Zootopia. Or changed the screening time to free up relatively popular prime screenings, and without exception, extend the number of screening days. And there was a very interesting tacit understanding. All the major theater chains took the approach of letting Zootopia and I Am a Passerby compete in the arena, and arranged for the two to be released at the same time in different theaters. The most exaggerated one theater chain even seemed to deliberately stir up the tension between the two movies. It arranged all the screenings of the two movies in the same time period. Every time this theater showed Passerby A, the movie next door a hall must contain an animal city. Wanda Cinema line increased from 2.5% to 5%, and the screening time was extended by 1 week. Dottie Cinemas increased from 4% to 8.5%, and the screening time was extended by 10 days. China Film International increased from 3% to 6%, extended screening time by 2 weeks. The most exaggerated example is the Poly Cinema line. Under Mr. Ling's keen sense of smell and decisive decision-making, the film schedule reached 10%. The average film schedule of Zootopia across the country has reached 7.5%. This number is not high, but compared to a small production, an unknown director and a newcomer film without stars, it is very amazing. It has even surpassed the domestic film invested by Li Bingbing and Ren Quan, and is close to the same as the overall film schedule of Passerby. Zootopia? What kind of movie is this? Have you never heard of it? Director Guo Zijian, starring Nangong Huang? What, I don't know him. The producer is Long Wu. Oh, it's probably a new film co-produced by the two places, right? Huh? Why is it marked as a horror movie? The poster doesn't look scary at all. There are many animals. That rabbit is so funny. Half of its ears are broken off and they are still wrapped in gauze. It feels like a comedy. Let's take a look. I've seen other movies anyway. The audience suddenly discovered that there was an extra horror film in the theater that they had not noticed before, juxtaposed with many posters of blockbusters. Almost every theater had 1 or 2 screenings during prime time. On the first day of the new movie schedule, the box office of Zootopia experienced a blowout growth. In just 1 day, it grossed 9 million in box office. Similarly, compared to the popular blockbusters, the single-day box office of 9 million is really nothing to talk about. Among the popular summer prime-time movies, it is unknown and has no highlights at all. But it depends on who you compare it with. If compared with ordinary movies, this result can be considered average or even very good. At least on the day I Am a Passerby was released, the box office was only 8 million. However, this was just the beginning, and the outbreak gained momentum in the following days. 4 days later, a new round of box office statistics came out. The second week of the summer season, box office statistics for this week. I Am a Passerby, with a total box office revenue of 40 million in 1 week, and the box office revenue is on the rise. If the impact of later film schedules is excluded, the revenue in the second half of the week actually increased slightly, which shows that word of mouth is fermenting and the box office has continued vitality. Therefore, the major theater chains did not really let it make way for Zootopia, but still arranged a good film schedule. On Dubon, the rating of Passerby has not changed much, remaining at 7.4 points. In the early days, the first 3 days of concentrated outbreak swept 300 million box office. In the following 4 days, the box office growth slowed down significantly, with a total weekly revenue of 400 million to 400 million. It is very consistent with the characteristics of fans-oriented movies. In the first few days, a large number of fans flocked to theaters to watch the movie. Once the fan craze passed, there was no accumulation of word of mouth and insufficient follow-up power. Non-fan audiences were unwilling to pay to go to the theaters, and the box office dropped very fast. On Dubon, Zayashide's rating has also not changed much, hovering at 4.4 points. The Taoist goes down the mountain, with a total box office of 400 million in 1 week, shows a stable but not exaggerated downward trend. This film is almost undisputedly positioned as a bad film, but for the reputation of the director and actors, and the very mysterious worldview that the film seems to express, there are still many people willing to pay for it. Moreover, there seems to be a very strange phenomenon in the mainland market. The worse the film, the more people go to see it, as if they spend some money to criticize it to see how bad it is, where it is bad, and to what extent it is bad. The score on Dubon, like its box office, has maintained a stable downward trend and has reached 4.8 points. Gay sex is one of the big selling points of movies in recent years. Even gay sex is annoying. This movie is also very strange. Dubon's score may not be 100% accurate, but one thing is certain, a movie with a score of 4.8 is definitely not a good movie. Among the other domestic films, the one with the worst revenue was only released for 2 days, and was taken off the screen after 3 or 4 screenings. The total box office was only more than 300,000, which is of little statistical value. The others generally ranged from several million to more than 10 million. The total box office of Zootopia in the first 3 days was close to 9 million, and it started to gain momentum from the 4th day. On the 4th day, affected by the adjustment of the film schedule, the national total box office exceeded the total of the first 3 days, 9.2 million. This was just the beginning. On the 5th day, 12 million. On the 6th day, 15 million. On the 7th day, 20 million. After a week, the national total box office of Zootopia reached the 65 million mark. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 555. Zootopia was released in its first week. After the film schedule adjustment, the box office experienced a blowout growth. On Dubon, Zootopia's score was exactly the opposite, with a cliff-like decline. On the 5th day, the score suddenly dropped from 9.0 to 7.4, and then it has been hovering around this score steadily. In the eyes of experts, this is not a bad thing. On the contrary, it shows that the ratings are beginning to become more rational and that the ratings are no longer dominated by the few enthusiastic fans before. The kind of super high ratings led by fans can hardly reflect the true level of a movie, but now it is just the opposite. The base of ratings is getting larger and larger. Only with the participation of many rational and semi-professional film critics can the movie be objectively reflected. Level. Although the score has dropped, the comments below have increased dozens of times, and most of them are words of praise. No matter how good a movie is, it is impossible for it to receive one-sided praise unless investors hire trolls to tout their movies, but Zootopia is not an example. In other words, the trolls in Zootopia were not invited by investors, but spontaneously. On the internet, such trolls are commonly called tap water, that is, free trolls. In order to distinguish them from marketing trolls who are hired for promotion, tap trolls are movie fans who voluntarily promote the movie after watching the movie. I am a Navy soldier, I promote myself and I am proud of it. I originally went to watch it with a skeptical attitude. Domestic movies, especially domestic horror movies, except that the heroine has scary silicone breasts and scary plastic surgery face, there is nothing scary about it, you know. But after watching this movie, my whole life was turned upside down. Do you know how torture it is for a fat person to not dare to order meat every time he eats? What does it feel like to hear the screams of animals in the closet? If you don't know, well, please come and see the Animal City of Horror. It is said that the producer of this film once went to Iraq to fight against IS and won a brilliant victory. Even the personally awarded him a medal. I didn't believe it at first, but after watching the movie, I believe that this is the real terrorist. There is no blood or violence, but it deeply implants terror in everyone's heart. Damn it, I was killing fish at home yesterday, and it suddenly occurred to me that if I were this fish, and an animal cut my neck with a knife, and then pulled out the internal organs alive, I would be hummed. Would you still be able to eat steamed hairy crabs? Think about the sight of your hands and feet being tightly trapped with ropes, placed in a big steamer, and steamed bit by bit until your eyeballs pop out. This movie promotes animal protection. I don't dare to kill it anyway. Although it is a bit excessive, but thinking about it on the other hand, this is just a movie. I hope we can understand restraint when using natural resources and not torture animals. Of course, there are also many more professional people who have kindly raised some issues and areas for improvement regarding the movie itself. Just from the perspective of the movie itself, there are still some unsatisfactory aspects. For example, the actors' acting skills are relatively immature, and the plot twists at certain points are a bit abrupt. For example, how does the long-eared rabbit fall in love with the male protagonist? He falls in love even if they don't agree with each other. Up. I think we can add a paragraph. The long-eared rabbit has buck teeth and is often laughed at by other animals. The protagonist makes braces to help her correct her teeth. Because the face of Queen Mauda Meow is that of the protagonist's sister, I didn't find any foreshadowing. Some plots progress too fast, and there is a lack of powerful background music to enhance the atmosphere in the movie. This may be related to too little investment. But its faults do not hide its merits. This is a work of domestic conscience. As far as I know, the film schedule was very low at the beginning, so that no one knew about it. It relied on its strength to carve out a bloody road in the summer blockbuster filled with blockbusters. I was originally going to give it 3.5 stars, but for this reason, I give it 5 and 10 stars. Some people have mentioned shortcomings, so let me talk about a few special highlights. The main producer of the movie is Yangchuan Zoo. My friends in Yangchuan City told me that the locals in Yangchuan City know that it is absolutely magical. In the zoo, the entire film is starred by real animals, which is unprecedented in the history of movies, and most of the animals have successfully completed the performance tasks. Another biggest highlight is that the creative ideas are simply amazing. Through the simplest change of position, a terrifying atmosphere is created, and there are many small details worth pondering in the movie. There is an article on the internet called 8 Philosophies of Life Revealed in Zootopia that you can read. It's rare to find a domestic film that can tell the story in a down-to-earth manner, have a correct outlook, and not treat the audience as idiots. I hope everyone can spend some money, go to the cinema and watch it, and contribute to domestic films. If it doesn't slit its wrists, don't abort the tire, or crash into a car, it's a good movie. I've watched it 3 times. I watched it once by myself, once with my girlfriend, and once with my girlfriend's best friend. Everyone who watched it said it was good. Huh? I seem to have captured something strange from your message. A large number of tap water appeared on the internet, and they were full of praise. However, they did not push up the score of Zootopia without thinking. Instead, most of them gave rational scores. The average score of 7.4 is not low. For a novice in the film industry, it's already a compliment. For a while, Zootopia almost became a must-talk topic among movie lovers. Friends' circle forwarded relevant information. It was normal to watch it twice, and many people watched it 3 times. It is said that people with delicate emotions can find different insights from it every time they watch it. Nonsense, why don't I have any insights? Su Ming squatted at the door of the waterside with a bowl of noodles in his arms and sweated all over. He didn't know how Hong Fi Fei made it. The ordinary noodles tasted so delicious. As Zootopia suddenly became popular, relevant information about the movie was also dug out by netizens and widely circulated on the internet. Yang Chuanzu, Su Ming, Guo Zijian, and the two leading actors Nanggong Huangqinchinj have all become celebrities. It can be predicted that the filming locations in the movie Zootopia, such as Gaiyuxianju, Tingfeng Pavilion, and the ancient tomb where the queen lived, will become popular tourist attractions in the future. Sister Tong is ready to welcome a new peak of visitors to the zoo before the end of the summer vacation. In addition, there are already theaters in the Philippines and Formosa to properly purchase distribution rights. The overseas distribution rights do not need to be shared with the theaters, and this money is the net income of Su Ming and Long Wu. Su Ming treated them to good food and drinks for the time being, but did not make in-depth contact with the other party. The price of the distribution rights follows the box office in mainland China. The higher the box office in mainland China, the higher the distribution rights can be sold. Zootopia has only been released for a week, and the box office is only more than 60 million. No rush, let the box office fly for a while. On weekend nights, major theaters readjusted the screening rate for next week based on last week's box office and the new films that will be released next week. Dividing line. I went out of town in the afternoon and arrived very late at night, so there are only 3 chapters today. I'll see if I can get to the hotel early, and try to rush out another chapter and post it together with tomorrow's. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 556. The domestic cinema screening rate has not yet been released, so Su Ming naturally has no way of knowing the specific information. But it doesn't take a brain to guess that next week's screening will definitely be on a higher level. This week's box office has proved that Zootopia is a profitable movie, and there is no reason for the cinema to not provide a good environment. What he is considering now is actually overseas distribution. China has become the world's second largest box office, and its annual domestic box office is second only to North America. The grand occasion many years ago when Hong Kong movies dominated the market and drove the development of the entire Southeast Asian film region is gone forever. At that time, the overseas distribution rights of Hong Kong movies in Southeast Asia were often sold at a higher price than the local box office, and they did not have to share the revenue with the cinema, which was the bulk of the film production company's income. Even though the times are different, after the development of the mainland film market, the overseas distribution rights account for a smaller and smaller share of the total revenue, and some movies can even be ignored, but Su Ming still has expectations for the overseas distribution of Zootopia. First, no matter how small a mosquito is, it is still meat. Those big productions with a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars certainly don't look down on the overseas distribution rights of millions or tens of millions, but for a small movie with a cost of tens of millions, the profits brought by overseas distribution rights cannot be underestimated. Second, it is out of confidence in the film Zootopia itself. Third, the global annual box office is close to $35 billion. North America alone accounts for 11 billion, and China is about 6 billion. Just as foreigners have begun to regard the Chinese market as a big cake that cannot be ignored, for Chinese filmmakers, the overseas market is a bigger cake. If they can open up the overseas market, especially the North American market, the benefits are self-evident. Even if Zootopia doesn't sell much, it is the first step to go overseas. Judging from the current domestic box office of Zootopia, Su Ming will definitely continue to get involved in the film industry in the future, and it is necessary to figure out the doorway to overseas distribution. After the two distributors from the Philippines and Formosa came to Yangchuan City, Su Ming was not completely out of contact. At the dinner table where they were received, there was a simple conversation about distribution rights. It was after this conversation that Su Ming decided to put the negotiation of overseas distribution rights on hold for the time being, and to concentrate on negotiating the distribution rights after Zootopia was released nationwide and the total box office statistics were calculated. Because the price offered by these two distributors was so low that people wanted to spit on them on the spot, and the total price was only a little over 1 million Chinese yuan. Although he did not expect to make a lot of money from overseas distribution, Su Ming could not accept such a low distribution price psychologically. Besides, there may be distributors from other countries or even North America to negotiate in the future. The price was too low this time, which would not be conducive to future negotiations. Zootopia earned more than 60 million in the first week, and Longwu from Xiangjiang was the first to call to congratulate him. Through the video call, Su Ming could clearly see that his poker face, which was always expressionless, had an obvious smile. Longwu made a profit this time. Just based on the box office of this week, his share of the profits would exceed 10 million. 10 million is by no means a small amount of money that can be ignored, not to mention that he spent almost no cost, just to help Su Ming set up a platform. Originally, he wanted to repay the favor he had made at the Jockey Club and help Su Ming, but he didn't expect that it would bring him very good returns. "I'm afraid you'll feel bad. I didn't do anything, but I just took away half of your mainland profits," Longwu said with a smile. "Brother Shi, you're being too polite. You help me, I help you, and we can make money together." Su Ming waved his hand and smiled. Money is something that one person can never make. Only those who can bring benefits to their friends will have more friends and make more money. Seeing Su Ming's statement, Longwu didn't continue to talk about this topic, and turned to say, "I have checked the overseas distribution rights. The two companies are not deliberately suppressing your price. The current situation of the Southeast Asian film market is not very good. Brother Shi, please help me analyze it. I know nothing about this." "You are a professional," Su Ming said. "The company that came from Formosa is Viashow, and its backstage is a first-tier large company in the island, and the Philippines is the first country in Asia to produce independent films, and the film industry should be well developed." The two companies gave a total of more than 1 million copyright fees, which made Su Ming very puzzled. Not contacting for the time being does not mean giving up the overseas distribution rights. On the contrary, Su Ming plans to use this time to do some homework, figure out the ins and outs of overseas distribution, and prepare for a suitable price in the future. Longwu briefly explained the situation. Although the Philippine film industry developed early, it progressed very slowly. The annual box office in the country is less than 2 billion Chinese yuan, and the total plate is not large. Due to the former colonial reasons, the Philippine film market is mainly occupied by European and American blockbusters. Longwu found last year's data, 78% of the box office were imported blockbusters. And facing the same troubles as the mainland, the Philippines has serious piracy. Most people in this country have a living standard below the average, and they don't have the habit of spending money to buy tickets to the cinema. In addition, there are high taxes. When making a movie in the Philippines, 30% of the film's revenue must be paid to the treasury as taxes, plus 12% value-added tax. This means that a movie must first cut nearly half of its revenue to pay taxes. Philippine film practitioners unanimously believe that high taxes are the culprit for the weakness of the Philippine film industry. Taxes murder the director's creativity and the producer's courage. Under such circumstances, it is certainly impossible for the other party to pay a high price to import Chinese films. You did the right thing. There is no need to waste your breath on the Philippines. Longwu smiled and said, "Your current net worth is hundreds of thousands of dollars every minute. It is a complete waste of life and time to negotiate prices with Philippine distributors." "What about Formosa?" Su Ming asked. In his impression, Formosa is a big market for movies. It can be said that people are stupid and rich. The golden decade of Hong Kong movies in the last century was full of the shadows of the rich in Formosa. Wow, your news is decades out of date. That was a thing of the past. It is of course different now. The mainland has risen. Long Wu shook his head and smiled. Before the two sides signed the Cross-Strait Economic Cooperation Framework Agreement in 2010, Formosa movies entering the mainland market were treated as imported films and had to compete with European and American blockbusters including Hollywood for the annual quota of 20 imported films. After the signing of the agreement, the number of movies entering the market is no longer subject to quota restrictions. As long as they are approved by the competent authorities, they can be released and screened. In order to protect local movies, Formosa has always limited the introduction of mainland movies to 10 films a year. After the signing of the cooperation agreement, although there was some relaxation, there were still restrictions on the number of films, and it was impossible to enter without restrictions. Fortunately, Zootopia, a film that did not involve politics or ethnicity at all, had no problem passing the review of the relevant departments of Taiwan. However, being able to distribute and screen does not mean that the distribution rights can be sold at a high price. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 557. Bayado's film market has its own special rules. According to official statistics, Bayado's annual box office revenue is only about 300 million Chinese dollars. Of course, Bayado's officials have always been unreliable. Statistics from the mainland are sometimes intentionally falsified, while Bayado's officials have a problem with their capabilities and cannot make clear statistics even if they want to. According to relatively authoritative folk statistics, Bayado's annual box office is definitely more than 300 million, at least it will not be lower than that of the Philippines, or even far exceed it. We must know that the Philippines has a population of 100 million and the island has only more than 20 million. It can be seen that the development of the film industry in the latter is much healthier and more mature than that in the former. The problem is that the tastes of audiences on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are different, and there are very few works that can cause huge repercussions on both sides of the Taiwan Strait at the same time. Either Taiwan's phenomenal films have failed in mainland China, or mainland box office masterpieces have failed in Taiwan. The box office gap between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait is huge for the same work. For example, Cape No. 7, known as the rise of Taiwanese films, has a box office of 130 million Chinese dollars in the local market, beating many Hollywood blockbusters. However, the box office in mainland China is only 30 million, which is not as good as some domestic small films. No response at all. On the other hand, movies with high box office in mainland China are often even worse in Taiwan, and even big productions with investment of hundreds of millions are not spared. Zhang Wen's Let the Bullets Fly had a box office of nearly 700 million Chinese dollars in mainland China, and was released in Bayadao with a total box office of 200,000 Chinese dollars. Thailand broke the Chinese box office record, with a box office of nearly 1.3 billion Chinese dollars in mainland China. It was released in Bayadao and only earned a pitiful 20,000 Chinese dollars in its first week. It is estimated that the total box office data is too embarrassing, so there is no statistics at all. Not only are mainland films failing in Taiwan, but so are Hong Kong films. Singles, which was a hit at the box office in both Hong Kong and mainland China, only had 120,000 yuan in Bayadao. There is not a single mainland film in the top 20 highest grossing films in the Bayadao film market, and the only Hong Kong film is Stephen Chow's Kung Fu. There are only a few Taiwanese films left, and the rest are divided up by Hollywood outside films. So, if Bayadao comes to buy your distribution rights, the risk is very high. Long Wu shrugged. Being able to offer a price of 750,000 yuan is already full of sincerity. So, I can't count on these two places. Su Ming frowned a little depressed. This isn't right. What's wrong? Long Wu asked. According to what you said, although Bayado's current policy of introducing mainland films is somewhat open, in general, the quantity is still limited, right? Longwu nodded, no more than 20. Then there is absolutely no need for the other party to take the risk of bringing in an unfavorable small production to occupy the precious quota. Since they are here to discuss it, they probably think that Zootopia is in line with the Treasure Island market and has prospects, right? Su Ming said uncertainly. After hearing what Su Ming said, Longwu thought for a while. It's very possible based on your analysis. He nodded seriously. I remembered that there are some films that have done quite well on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, such as the two films 33 Days After Love and The Five Stolen Days. It performed well every year and ranked among the top 10 in Bayado's annual box office. Wait a minute, he said while operating on the computer. From Su Ming's point of view, Longwu was very stiff when operating the mouse. He pressed the mouse so tightly that veins popped out on the back of his hand. Brother Ten, why don't you use so much force? Operating a computer doesn't mean killing people. Su Ming smiled silently. I don't know much about high technology. My wife usually does the operation. She went shopping and I was very nervous to operate it by myself. Longwu stared at the computer screen tightly, holding the mouse and performing stiff operations without raising his head. Explain. Su Ming. Longwu worked on the opposite side for a long time, and finally found an Excel file from the folder and opened it. He took out a pair of reading glasses and stared at the screen for a long time. Hey, don't fall asleep. Su Ming was almost asleep when Longwu's voice rang from the speaker. Oh, Brother Ten, what did you find? Su Ming was excited. I took a look and found that in the past 5 years, the mainland movies that have grossed over 10 million in Bayadao all have several common characteristics. They are small productions and do not involve politics, and one more thing. Longwu raised his head and said seriously, don't talk about life and ideals. Su Ming wanted to laugh every time he saw Longwu's serious expression. Without life and ideals, what's the difference between being a salted fish? I was stunned for a moment, and then I understood. It's not that we don't talk about it, but the life and ideals that mainland movies talk about are generally a little divorced from reality and make people confused. For example, the Taoist priest went down the mountain. Otherwise, it would be too heavy, such as The Favorite directed by Gu Chengui and starring Zhang Ziyi and Aaron Kwok. Audiences in Bayadao like to watch movies that are close to life and do not talk about big principles, but only talk about small lives. So, there is probably a market for Animal City in Treasure Island, so the other party came to negotiate, Su Ming said. That should be the case, but even so, the price cannot be too high. Longwu nodded, I suggest you take a broader view. Asia is far more than these two regions. Japan, India, Singapore, Malaysia, and Xinjiang can all contribute to the box office, especially Japan. The total amount is huge. In the past, my company's movies were exported to Japan at a basically 1:1 price with the local box office, and the other party still made a profit. When Su Ming heard the words our company, he glanced at Longwu. Longwu still looked expressionless, not knowing what he was thinking. Su Ming pondered for a moment, maybe he overinterpreted Longwu's meaning, maybe not. But in any case, it's too early to talk about it now, so he said, I roughly understand, Brother Shi, wait until Zootopia is off the screen and the total box office of the movie is announced, then we can talk again. Okay, Longwu nodded. Oh, I almost forgot, Guo Zijian and his team have already gone back, Brother Shi, please tell them for me, I will send them a big red envelope when the box office is announced. You can talk to him yourself, Longwu shrugged. Brother Shi, they are your people, how can I say it directly? Su Ming smiled. Young people are too meticulous, be careful not to have white hair at a young age. But it's okay, so as not to embarrass Guo Zijian. Longwu also laughed. The next day, through various channels, it was learned that the schedule of several movies this week was finally determined. I am a passerby. This kind of word-of-mouth movie has obvious advantages and disadvantages. The box office will not soar or plummet, but may steadily increase. After losing the battle with Zootopia, the screening schedule actually increased by 1 percentage point, close to 9%. Tiny times 4, the first week was a complete explosion, and the second week began to weaken, and the screening schedule dropped to 25%, but this is still a very scary number. The Taoist goes down the mountain, the more he curses, the happier he is, and the screening schedule remains stable. Other Zhang Zhen's ghost stories are no longer important. The national average screening schedule of horror Zootopia reached 18%. In addition, after this week, a series of summer blockbusters that have been promoted for a long time will be released one after another, including Gardenia Blossoms, Monster Hunt, Shaun the Sheep, Pancake Man, and a well-received domestic animation Monkey King, Hero is Back. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 558. Seeing the relevant information, Su Ming felt both happy and worried. Judging from the film schedule and screening time for Zootopia, Zootopia has been recognized by the market and theaters. Both the tap water and the theaters are actively promoting this film. The 18% filming rate can tie the domestic for ordinary blockbusters. It can be seen that the box office will rise again next week. On the other hand, time is running out for Zootopia. Although basically all theaters have extended their release time, Zootopia will not be released for about 2.5 weeks, but with the many popular blockbusters coming one after another, the momentum is too strong, even if it will not be able to win at the box office in the end. With the success of the film, theaters will definitely arrange sufficient film schedules to allow these newly released blockbusters to test the waters. Sincerity cannot compete with it. The only real chance left for Zootopia to sweep up the box office is this week. This week is enough to determine the total box office of Zootopia. This is an obvious thing, and it doesn't take much wisdom to understand that the employees at the zoo are very nervous and check the box office online when they are at work. People are worried about gains and losses. When Zootopia was released 2 days ago, everyone was not optimistic about it and thought it would be good if it could recoup the cost. After the box office explosion of more than 60 million last week, many people are now starting to have unrealistic fantasies. Thinking that it might reach 500 million, maybe 1 billion, even more exaggerated, and some even think about breaking the box office record. The real person involved, Su Ming, was not nervous at all. When things have reached this stage, he has done everything he can. The final box office performance is not something he can control. Now that it has been launched to the market, he can just wait quietly for the test of the market. Nangong Huang, who had been following him around all day, has now become a moderate star. He is interviewed by the media every day, especially local media, including Yangchuan radio, TV station, newspapers, and forums. There are arrangements almost every day. Even Cheng Cheng had to take time off frequently. The total scenes of this heroine from beginning to end do not exceed 15 minutes, which is not as good as some animals with heavy scenes. However, she is young and quite cute. She often comes up with some hilarious sayings, making her like a rising child star in Yangchuan City. The child star has now fallen into new troubles. It is said that there are so many fans in school that she has to face a new issue in her life, dealing with interpersonal relationships. Especially how to face those few former little traders who are now little legs. It is said that Yu Tao, a student from the Four Stripes, is extremely embarrassed and angry. Recently, he saw Cheng Cheng walking in circles from a distance. The grand occasion of being followed by a large group of people wherever he went is gone forever. The current situation is very bleak. Yesterday, classmate Sidea Gang finally couldn't stand the feeling of being left out. In front of everyone, he yelled, "I will repay you 10 times for the humiliation I suffered today," and then decisively transferred to another school. Wouldn't this have created a lifelong enemy? Su Ming was speechless. What was the child thinking about now? Yes, today's young people really don't understand what they are thinking. Sitting across from Su Ming was an elegant middle-aged man. There were already wrinkles on the corners of his eyes and eyebrows. If you look closely, you can see that his expression is a little haggard. Old comrade Hongbo finally came to the zoo. In fact, he had been here a long time ago. Su Ming had been too busy and had no time to see him. His current identity is a bit strange. Su Ming will not admit anything. However, Hong Fifei and Ding Jing created an illusion to make Hongbo think that the person in front of him was his future son-in-law. Su Ming knew what he was thinking, so you have to deliberately pretend not to know. Pretend to understand when you are confused, pretend to be confused when you understand. Hongbo saw the string of tridacna beads on Su Ming's wrist, and then looked at Hong Fifei, who was sitting beside him, deliberately pretending to be shy and low-browed. He was in a good mood and took the initiative to propose a toast to Su Ming. "Mr. Su, I asked you to call me Zia Su." Hey, Su Ming nodded, non-committal. "I heard Fifei say that we had some misunderstandings about the incident in Sunsan." "Hey, it's not really a misunderstanding. I was just anxious at the time. As a father, I ruined the family business and it didn't matter at all. Let Fifei stay." Hongbo sighed and looked at Hong Fifei happily. "Now that Fifei is settled, I feel relieved." "Dad," Hong Fifei was really a little embarrassed this time. Hongbo's words contained a double entendre. How could Su Ming not catch it? He thought that since he was doing a show, he would do the whole thing, so he bit the bullet and said meaningfully, "Uncle Hong, don't worry, I am really determined to develop the catering business. I also saw that although my place is not big, there is still a need in this area. As long as she is willing to condescend to work here, I will treat her well." "Okay, okay. Then I wish you great success, Xiao Su," Hongbo finished in one gulp. "Thank you." Su Ming took a sip. Hong Fifei was on the side, her expression a little stiff, and she pretended to persuade her, "Drink less." When she persuaded him like this, Su Ming knew it was going to be bad. Hong Fifei is really bad at acting, neither her tone nor her eyes look like she is facing the man she likes. It was just a fake expression at the dinner table. Su Ming could see it, and Hongbo, a man who had been in society for many years, could certainly see it too. Sure enough, Hongbo put down his chopsticks, narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Hong Fifei, and then at Su Ming. His eyes were quite playful. "Dad, please eat more." Hong Fifei hurriedly covered up. Hongbo nodded and coughed. Su Ming's heart skipped a beat. It was really going to be bad. Hongbo said, "Boss Su, I have an unwelcome request. Hung Jiake is closed now. At my age, it's still early for me to retire. I can't just sit there and wait to die, right? How can people respond to this?" Hongbo said again, "Although Hung Jiake has closed down, I think I have some experience in catering management. If Boss Su doesn't mind, I will help you. Don't worry, I don't want money, I just want to help, give some advice and check. Just think of it as finding something to do in my later years." "Dad, didn't you say you wanted to go back to your hometown?" Hong Fifei almost jumped up. "He came to the zoo to help with catering. He was under his nose all day long. What kind of relationship did he have with Ding Jing? Why should I go back to my hometown?" "Waiting to die." Hongbo snorted, looked at Su Ming, and said, "Boss Su didn't say anything, why are you so nervous?" "Dad, but..." Hong Fifei kicked Su Ming lightly under the table, indicating that he rejected Hongbo. Su Ming was about to think of a reason to refuse, but then he thought, it would be a good thing for him to have Hongbo help with the management. He laughed, "Great, Uncle Hong, I just need a manager for the catering." "Fifei, your cooking skills are impeccable, but your management skills are not good enough. With you here, I can rest assured. So, let's make it a deal today. I will hire you as the catering director of the zoo, and the salary and bonus will be in accordance with the regulations. What do you think? Of course it's good. Mr. Su, it's settled. Come on, I'll toast you, Hongbo said with a smile. Come on, let's do it. Hong Fei was completely dumbfounded, and stood aside with her mouth half open. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 559. This is a dinner of unity, friendship, and encouragement. After the meal, both the host and the guests were happy. Su Ming found an experienced manager in the catering industry. From then on, the catering business under him finally had a person who could take charge of it independently, and he didn't have to worry about it himself. Although Hongbo had experienced business failure, it didn't mean that he couldn't do business. It was not uncommon for the business world to have ups and downs. The fact that he could make Hung Jiake from a mere roadside stall to several large hotels was enough to prove Hongbo's ability. Although Hung Jiake went bankrupt, the subsequent matters were handled very well and there was no debt. It was said that Hongbo had saved some money on hand, which indirectly showed that Hongbo was still relatively stable in doing things. Moreover, Su Ming would be at the helm of major decisions in the future. Su Ming was relieved, and Hongbo's heart was also at ease. When he first heard that Hong Fei had a secret love for his current boss, Hongbo was worried. He still knows his daughter better. At such an old age, she has never been attracted to any man, and the psychologist also told him that it is very unlikely to change this problem. Low possibility does not mean no possibility. Love, or good feelings, are essentially attraction. As long as the aura of both parties is right, or one party has a strong attraction, it can cause lethality to both the same and opposite sexes. Moreover, Hong Fei is a woman by nature after all. If she really meets a particularly outstanding young man, she may not be unmoved. Hongbo was half believing and half doubting. Maybe this young boss is to his daughter's taste? After eating this meal, Hongbo's mind is like a mirror, and he can basically be sure of 2 points. First, this Mr. Su is undoubtedly attractive to young women. Second, Hong Fei definitely does not like Mr. Su. All this is probably a play by his daughter to fool him. Unless a professional actor is performing, it is difficult to conceal the look, tone, and small movements that are revealed inadvertently, not to mention that Hongbo knows Hong Fei too well, as he has watched his daughter grow up. So in the end, Hongbo abruptly asked to stay and work. He could see that although this boss and his daughter did not have a romantic relationship, they were still on good terms. In this way, not only would he have something to do in the second half of his life, but he could also keep an eye on Hong Fei nearby. Hongbo rented an apartment near the zoo and went over everything that happened at the dinner table today in his mind. Su Ming left a deep impression on him. In his early 20s, he had created a family business of tens of millions in more than a year after graduation and had made some reputation in the world. It was impossible for such a person not to leave a deep impression on others. The most rare thing was that this young man had a very peaceful personality. In the eyes of an old man like Hongbo who had experienced social experience, this was much more valuable than Su Ming's current achievements. Generally, people who succeed at a young age will have some changes in their personality and have a bit of a strange temper, especially those who have made a comeback from ordinary people. They are either arrogant and resentful of society, or they are full of glass hearts, lonely and arrogant. And this Mr. Su looks smiling, just like ordinary people. This shows that his mind and character are very mature, and his mentality has not been distorted by sudden wealth and achievements. There is another possibility that his ambition, or ideal, is very big. In his opinion, the current achievements are not worth mentioning, so he does not show any madness. Well, he can probably guess what I think. Since he let me stay, at least it means that he does not support Fifei and Ding Jing's affairs. Well, in this case, there is much more room for operation, and there is a lot to do. There is a lot to do. Hongbo's eyes lit up and he slapped his thigh heavily. Hongbo was worried about Hong Fifei's affairs, and Ding Jing was also worried. Boss Su, you're being unfair. Ding Jing was on the verge of going berserk, her eyes flashing like a robot with water in its circuit. In that case, I have to pretend to be her boyfriend, but I can't just kick my future father-in-law out of the house, Su Ming said with a smile, but he didn't believe this reason. That's just an excuse, really. If you say you don't want to help, we can find another way. Now, not only did you not help, but you also brought my dad here. This is great, you've completely ruined the two of us. Hong Fifei said, stamping her feet. Su Ming was just worried about how he could explain to the two girls, and when he heard what Hong Fifei said, he immediately caught her. His face became serious, his tone became extremely serious, he frowned and glared at Hong Fifei, and shouted in a deep voice, Master Hong, I don't like to hear you say that. What do you mean by scourge? What do you mean by attracting? That's your biological father, your dad, not a stray dog. How can you, as a daughter, talk like that? This hat of unfilial piety fell from the sky, and no one could catch it. Hong Fifei was stunned for a moment, her face flushed, and she stammered, oh, that's not what I meant. Ding Jing didn't react for a while. How did the situation suddenly get out of control, and Su Ming suddenly gain the upper hand? Then what do you mean? Su Ming was amused in his heart. Hong Fifei was indeed easier to fool, but the expression on her face became more serious. She interrupted Hong Fifei directly and continued to scold, how should you two live like this? I understand that life is different from that of my parents, but if a person doesn't even love his parents, what qualifications do he have to stand here and talk about love? Your father came all the way to find you, just to make your life better. Taking care of your life has turned into a disaster when it comes to your mouth. Master Hong, oh, and Mr. Ding, Su Ming, put my words here, no matter how beautiful you are or how rich your company is, Su Ming, don't care about friends who don't even recognize their parents. After saying that, he snorted coldly, turned around and left. Wait a minute, I really didn't mean that. Hong Fifei was anxious and angry. She grabbed Su Ming's wrist and tried to defend herself. Su Ming had the string of heirloom beads hanging on his wrist. He turned around and glanced at Hong Fifei coldly, what, you want the beads back after I pricked them? Okay, I don't care about it either. It's not surprising that his energy storage ball must pass through one of these beads in order to work. No, no, Hong Fifei was so anxious that she was incoherent and turned to look at Ding Jing as if asking for help. Mr. Su, don't be angry. It was Fifei who used the wrong words just now. She is also filial at heart. Ding Jing came up to smooth things over. Humph Su Ming pretended to be angry and looked down at Hong Fifei's hand, which was holding his own. Hong Fifei hurriedly let go as if she was electrocuted. Master Hong, and Mr. Ding, I believe what you say. However, after all, we are children. How should we get along with our parents in the future? I suggest you think about it carefully and don't hurt the old man's heart, Su Ming said. After speaking, he walked out of Tingfeng Pavilion with his head held high and expressionless. The two women were left looking at each other. After a long time, Ding Jing finally realized that today they were the ones who asked Su Ming to accuse him, but with just one word, the situation completely turned around, and it turned into Su Ming holding a criticism meeting against them, as if he was criticizing a child. Scolded her? It's all my fault for talking nonsense, Hong Fifei blamed herself. Ding Jing looked at the direction Su Ming was leaving, pondered for a long time, and finally figured it out. This guy was just using the topic as an excuse, and Zhu Beiji was trying to beat him up. Too cunning, Ding Jing gritted her teeth in anger. Super Zhu. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 560. Hongbo's workability and efficiency are indeed much higher than Hongfi Fei's. Hongfi Fei has been in the zoo for several months. Tingfeng Pavilion has been renovated long ago, but it has not been officially opened to the public. After Hongbo took over, Tingfeng Pavilion opened in less than 3 days. The first floor of Tingfeng Pavilion has the largest area. As a small restaurant for tourists, it can accommodate up to 40 people at the same time, and the price is popular. The second and third floors are several private rooms, which need to be booked temporarily and are high-end. The fourth floor has only one private room, which is usually not open to the public. It is exclusive to the big leader comrade Su Ming. In addition to him coming to eat, he can also entertain some high-level customers and leaders. As for the original bar business of Nangong Huang, it was completely cancelled. Hongbo evaluated that Tingfeng Pavilion is a traditional hotel route and is not suitable for opening a bar. People come to eat and talk, and drink in the private room or private room, which has a certain degree of privacy. Who would go to an open bar? Opening a small bar in Tingfeng Pavilion is a pure loss-making business. Anyway, Nangong Huang is now either accepting interviews or attending classes at the art school every day to catch up on his knowledge and skills in performing arts, so he has no time to manage the bar. In addition, Tingfeng Pavilion and the zoo's catering department were integrated, and the original chefs and sisters in the zoo's employee cafeteria were all planned to be managed by Tingfeng Pavilion. A master chef in the cafeteria was a little unconvinced at first, but after Hongfi Fei showed off her knife skills in cutting cucumbers, the master chef came to join without saying a word and brought his tools. On the first day of Tingfeng Pavilion's opening, all the tons of materials prepared were sold out, and it was listed on the food section of the Yangchuan City Forum that night. I suggest that you don't go to the zoo's Tingfeng Pavilion for dinner. After eating, you will sadly find that you grew up as a. It's not that exaggerated. It's really delicious. It's so delicious. What if I can't eat it in the future, woohoo? To be honest, I'm afraid of comparing goods. Our family ordered 3 dishes and a soup for lunch, ordinary home-cooked dishes. After eating, my wife cooked it again in the evening, but she just couldn't make it taste the same. Don't you look at who the chef is? She's a famous female chef in the chef world, my idol. Someone in the industry spoke up. I'm a little greedy after hearing what you said. Is it expensive? The price is okay, a little more expensive than the market, but acceptable. It is said that the dishes on the upper floors are more expensive, and the menu has been changed. It's not a matter of price, the key is to wait for a seat. There are too many people, I waited until 1:30 before I got a seat. I heard that there will be a food stall in front of Tingfeng Pavilion in the evening. It is estimated that the scale is relatively large, and there is no need to wait for a seat. If I remember correctly, Tingfeng Pavilion is the restaurant in the movie Zootopia? Selling human brains and kidneys, and grilling human ribs. Wow, ha ha ha, you got it right. It's so scary, I must try it. It is said that starting tomorrow, Tingfeng Pavilion Hotel will have special services. Special services? Is the beautiful chef going to help me masturbate? Wow, haha. In the next 2 days at noon, there was a long queue in front of Tingfeng Pavilion Hotel. Except for the private rooms upstairs, the lobby on the first floor did not accept reservations, and it was first come first served. The opening of Tingfeng Pavilion restaurant also attracted many gourmets. Most of these people did not come to see the animals, but bought a ticket and came in to queue up for a meal. Because there were many people waiting for a table, Hongbo specially arranged for the waiters to set up a temporary shed on the small bluestone square at the entrance of Tingfeng Pavilion. The diners sat under the shed, drinking tea and waiting for their turn. The weather was hot, and the diners were getting a little impatient after waiting for a long time. Just when someone was about to start making a fuss, they heard a sound of flapping wings. In front of everyone's eyes, two big roosters with bright feathers flew to Tingfeng Pavilion. A closer look showed that they were not roosters, but two big fat parrots. Hey, where did the parrots come from? They are so big. Boss, the parrots in your zoo have escaped, catch them quickly, someone laughed and called the staff of Tingfeng Pavilion. Tingfeng Pavilion is modeled after ancient architecture. Each floor has extended eaves around it. The eaves of one floor are more than 1 meter wide. Two macaws with their heads held high are pacing on it, walking back and forth, looking down at the diners below. Stupid! A parrot muttered with its neck tilted up. Hey, what are you talking about? Someone who was close heard it and pointed at the parrot and asked. It's none of your business, whoever recognizes it is the one who is talking, another parrot said with a squinting eye. A receptionist standing at the door came out, looked up at the two parrots, smiled and said nothing, turned back to the store, grabbed a handful of peanuts and threw them on the eaves, and shouted, "Be honest, if you keep cursing, be careful that the director will pluck your feathers." The two macaws were startled, flapped their wings and hid back, and they really stopped talking. Then they lowered their heads, ate all the peanuts like chickens pecking at rice, cleared their throats, and began to speak in human language. "Welcome. Please come in, sir. Sister, what dishes are in the restaurant today?" "Stupid, I told you early in the morning, why can't you remember?" "I have a bad memory, please remind me." "I'm telling you, I'm only going to tell you once, listen carefully, today's dishes are steamed lamb, steamed bear paws, steamed deer tail, roasted duck, roasted chicken, roasted goose, braised salted duck, and soy sauce chicken, bacon, pine flowers, tripe, dried meat, sausages, assorted soy sauce dishes, smoked chicken, white tripe, steamed 8 treasure pig, duck stuffed with glutinous rice." The macaw spoke really fast, just like setting off firecrackers, chattering a lot. The diners waiting for the table below were all amazed. The sound spread to the Tingfeng Pavilion. Many diners who were eating didn't know what happened. When they saw the commotion of the people waiting for the table outside, everyone raised their necks and looked up to the sky. There were many people cheered loudly, not knowing what was going on, and ran out to see. Another parrot said, "Sister, say it again, I didn't hear you clearly." "I've said it before, I'll just say it once, I won't say it again." Some of the diners started to boo, laughing, one more. "Yes, say it again, I'll buy you peanuts to eat," someone shouted at the parrot. Hongbo walked out of Tingfeng Pavilion, punched the diners inside and outside, held a loudspeaker, and said with a smile, "Dear tourists and friends, in order to thank everyone for your love, our restaurant specially launched Parrot Crosstalk. From now on, we will introduce Parrot Crosstalk. 2 parrots will perform crosstalk and storytelling for everyone here. If you don't have to eat and wait for a table, you can order a cup of tea and listen to the cool breeze while listening to the 2 parrots talking about crosstalk. Oh, tea is not expensive, ranging from dozens to hundreds for a pot. There are all. What kind of jokes will they talk about? Are they going to talk about the romance of the Sui and Tang dynasties? Someone asked jokingly. Ahem, I don't know much for the time being." Before Hongbo finished speaking, he heard an old and hoarse voice, "Li Yuanba came up with a hammer no matter what." Wu Tiangzi had no choice but to use a mixed gold jang. The shock made his hands bleed, and he turned around and ran away. When Li Yuanba came up, he stretched out his hand, threw it to the sky, caught his feet with both hands, and click. A parrot standing above the head imitated Mr. Shan Tianfang's voice and spoke with style. As he spoke, he suddenly stopped. "How's the click?" someone asked loudly. "Kaka, kaka, kaka." The parrot scratched its head with its big wings. It clicked for a long time without thinking about what was going to happen next, and it turned around anxiously on the cornice. Another parrot flapped its wings and said, "Stop wandering around, I've probably forgotten the words again." A burst of laughter.